Alright, hello guys, Cyrillian here bringing you our first ever YouTube video. We're starting out with an Unholy Death Knight Mythic Plus guide for 10.1. So we're pretty much going to run through everything you need to know to be an Unholy Death Knight player in Mythic Plus here. We're going to run through our talents, we're going to run through stat priority, gearing, investment slot items, our rotation, our defensive usage, and some tips and tricks for some of the Mythic Plus dungeons that we have this season, which will also be a follow-on series to this video. So, jumping right into it, let's jump right into talents to start here. So this is pretty much going to be our standard talent tree for the most part for every Mythic Plus dungeon, with a couple just here and there. So starting with the class tree, pretty standard setup going on here. You always want to take short AMS, because in keys there's a lot of things that AMS can completely immune or cancel, as well as just helping out your healer with that 20-second cooldown on your defensive. One big changing point that you can swap out here is Anti-Magic Zone and Asphyxiate, depending on your group comp and what dungeon it is. These can be swapped out for a couple other talents we'll talk about later. But primarily Anti-Magic Zone is good on dungeons with lots of group-wide magic damage, which you'll be able to help your healer out with dropping that zone every 2 minutes. We'll talk about what dungeons this will be good in later on in follow-up videos, discussing each dungeon specifically. Asphyxiate is pretty much comp dependent. If you have a lot of stops already, you might not need to take this, and you can swap that point into someplace else. Pretty standard pathing down the left here. If you're not going to end up taking AMZ or Asphyxiate, you'll probably drop one of those points into Permafrost here, just getting a nice absorb shield with all your auto attacks entire dungeon. Wraithwalk may be situational depending on affixes, but you're usually not going to take it, to be completely honest. Getting down into this last row of the class tree, this is where we'll have a lot of potential swapping going on. So if you want to be getting a lot more, let's say, damage out, and you're not too worried about being tanky, you could take out Will of the Necropolis, put another point into Unholy Bond, get some more Runeforge effectiveness there. I've started swapping into Blood Draw and Will of the Necropolis. It gives you a lot more tankiness. Getting the health drain below 30% is a nice little buff if you just take a big chunk of damage. That helps you out a little bit there. And then Will of the Necropolis is just incredible. You just take huge DR below 30% as well, giving your hero a little bit of time to snack a heal on you, or for you to hit a death strike before you get one shot by something. Blood Draw, you could swap into Insidious Chill, and you could take out 2 points here. You go Insidious, grab this, that, you'll have to go another point into that, boom, 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 then you're done. So, up to you if you would rather go Insidious Chill for reducing target's auto attack speed, maybe help you tank out a little bit there. But I like Blood Draw a lot. So that's pretty much what I use for the class tree. Like I said, Death Knights were really tanky, we'll talk about that later, but Veteran of the Third War obviously required 20% extra stam there. Those are your big defensive ones. Pretty much this middle line, a lot of defensives in here, as well as Permafrost, Absorbs, and then the Blood Draw Will at the bottom here is just where you get a lot of your tankiness. Which really helps out your healers and keys. Specifically, any magic damage, you're pretty much gaining with AMS and AMZ, which is great. Alright, moving over into the spec tree. This is also a pretty standard build here. We'll swap 1 or 2 points, but you pretty much just come down the left side here until you get down to Sudden Doom and Plaguebringer. Plaguebringer's pretty much the core of our kit in Mythic Plus. Increases all of our disease damage to 100% faster for 10 seconds. We'll talk about that later on the rotation, but you're pretty much going to always keep that up throughout a dungeon. You'll want a weak aura, or if you want, you can look in the top right, but you'll want a weak aura to track when that's up, as well as one for Defile, which we'll talk about later. Coming down the left side, we come down all the way through Unholy Blight and Defile. Defile is now incredible in 10.1. It is a massive damage increase for us. We have that stacking mastery buff as enemies are standing in defile up to 8%, so we basically always have 8% increased damage, which is just incredible. And you can chain that up to 3 or 4 defiles in a row of having that 8% buff before it goes down, because we have 2 stacks of defile. So you're going to have that buff up for a lot of the dungeon. We roll Ebb and Fever instead of Bursting Swords here because it increases our plague damage. That combined with Plague Bringer, just we do a lot passive plague damage, which is great. Coming down the middle, we take Magus, we take Army, and then down here is where you can start swapping a few points. So between Ghoulish Frenzy and Morbidity, you can choose to have one in each. You can put both of them in one of them. It's kind of up to you. You can sim yourself as well, see what is saying. But those are 2 flex points. You can also take one of those out for improved Death Coil. If there's a dungeon with some 2-target cleave bosses, or just lots of more single target or small packs you're pulling, that can be really helpful, increasing boss damage as well as increasing 2-target cleave. And we'll talk about that when we go into specific videos later on about each dungeon and where that will be good to use. But this is kind of my standard loadout on what I take for pretty much every single dungeon that I run with my group. Alright, moving into stat priority. So for us, our stat priority is Mastery, better than everything. And then you'll want a balance of Crit and Haste. Crit is better for AoE, which is the majority of Mythic Plus dungeon. And then Haste helps with our single target damage, as well as just having some Haste is nice. So it's really up to you on what this balance is. Towards the end of last season, I started going a really crit heavy build, and that felt really good, especially in dungeons like Algathar, where you have lots of big pulls. That felt great. I'm assuming it's going to feel really good in a dungeon like Brackenhide this season, where we have, again, a lot of big pulls. Yeah. And then everything else, just, I guess, if you have some verse, that's great. Just extra damage reduction. But like I said, it's pretty much Mastery, much better than everything else, and then supplement with Crit and Haste to whatever kind of combination of those that you'd like to get. So the reason that Mastery is so incredible for us is that, as you can see here, it increases the damage of your minions and shadow damage by scaling by whatever your Mastery is. And in case you're wondering where most of our damage comes from, it is 1, minions, Army, Arguul, Dark Transformation, Apocalypse, Magus of the Dead. That's a ton of our damage in a dungeon. And then the rest of it is shadow damage. It increases our shadow damage by Mastery. So you'll ask, what's shadow damage? Unholy Blight. It's what? Shadow damage. Virulent Plague. Outbreak. Shadow damage. Scourge Strike. Shadow damage. Festering Wound. Shadow damage. Defile. Abomination Limb. Unholy Assault. Epidemic. Death Coil. Our entire kit is shadow damage. So getting as much Mastery as you can get to increase that shadow damage is pretty much the most important thing you can do in a Mythic Plus, or in a Mythic Plus environment, as well as a raid environment, honestly. So that's pretty much our stat priority for the most part. Like I said, lots of Mastery, and then I like to go heavy crit with some haste. So moving into gear and best in slot for Season 2. So for your trinkets for Season 2, you're going to want to get a Vial of Animated Blood, which drops from Underrot. I luckily already got one. We got one pretty early on. So like I said, that comes from Underrot. That's going to be your best trinket. 1, it has a ton of Mastery, which is great. And then 2, the on-use effect is incredible. Just big strength, decays over 18 seconds, but still, great trinket. Your second trinket will come from raid if you want best in slot. So there's 2 options. If you want to be fully BIS and you're a big raider, you're going to want to get Neltharion Scarlet Suffering. Very good stat stick trinket. Lots of verse, a good equip effect. But if you don't want to go that deep into the raid, the third boss has the Ominous Chromatic Essence, which is pretty much like Whispering Incarnate Icon from Vault. And you'll want to get one of these, and this will be really easy to get. Like I said, it's the third boss. Even if you don't raid that much, it's very easy to come in here and clear normal or heroic and get this at a heroic eye level, potentially even mythic later on down the line. but if you're not that big into raiding, easily go in here, get a normal or heroic, and use this as your stat stick trinket as your second trinket, because double on use isn't the worst, but it's not the best. I like having one on use and then one stat stick trinket, and this one works great for that. If you really don't want to go into raid, I would pretty much just go through the dungeons, sim what's going to be best for you. Halls of Infusion, Iridius Fragment's also a great trinket for us, gives us mastery. You're not going to be getting any strength from your trinkets then, but that's an option. It's another on-use trinket. You could run both of those. This one's a 3-minute, so it lines up with your army and every boss. So you'd probably use that on army, and then use Vile every other Unholy Blight, DT, Apocalypse cooldowns, because those are 45, so that'll be up for every 2 of those. Yeah, and then for rings, our BIS ring is going to come from Neltharis, actually. It's big mastery, small crit, which is great. So you'll want to pick up that from Neltharis, and then you can either go crafted ring and put whatever, either haste mastery, crit mastery, whatever balance you want to have on there. Or you can run, again, raid, second boss, has a huge mastery with some haste on it ring, which is also, like, you look at that mastery, you get 125 mastery at base heroic. Going up to mythic, you're already breaking 1,000 at 441, so that ring is incredible. It's off the second boss. It's going to be very easy to get on heroic or mythic, so I would recommend that one if you don't have a crafted ring to use there. For weapons are really easy for us to get this season. There's a ton of weapons in dungeons. Our BIS weapon will come from Brackenhide. It's a crit mastery, also a log mog, which is great. That'll be the trinket you're gonna, or the weapon you're gonna want to get. I used a crafted weapon last season. Considering upgrading something besides my weapon first with my sparks this season to try to get some embellishments up, because like I said, it's really easy to get a weapon. You might not get your best bang from your buck to upgrade your crafted weapon early in the season. We have a weapon from here. A weapon from Halls is also good. It's big crit small mastery, which is honestly fine. Now there are stuff to crit haste, that's okay. There's no mastery on it, but you might get a lot of mastery from other sources. Nothing from Oldemon. The freehold one, haste first. I wouldn't recommend that one. Underrot one as well, I wouldn't necessarily recommend. It has big mastery, so that's good for us, and the verse honestly isn't bad, so if you have good crit and haste from other sources, be okay with that one. Notharian's again haste first, you won't really want that, and Vortex Pinnacle has a haste mastery, so that's also an option for you. So lots of options from weapons from dungeons this season, which is great. If you're a raider and you can get Neltharion weapon, that would be it. That would probably be our BIS at Heroic or Mythic. It's crit mastery, has a good equip effect. So if you are a raider, I would go for that. But if you're not, plenty of weapons from dungeons this season. I want to see if you get all 3 vaults. People did the math out. You have like a 25% every week to get a weapon, which is just gigantic. So that's great. As far as embellishments go, this season, I'm going to be using Lariat until I start losing sockets. I haven't lost any yet. I'm still full sockets from last season. And I'm running Frostfire Belt still because that's just what I ran last season. But once you start losing sockets, you're going to want to run a combination of either Blue Silken Lining, the new Shadow Flame embellishment, Frostfire Belt, or the wrist guards with the verse on them. Until we get even full sockets, end of season Lariat might not be as good. You can use any combination of those. Whatever you currently have and want to upgrade, you can use. You can sim yourself to see what's exactly best, but all of them are pretty interchangeable for us in Mythic Plus. It's pretty flexible on what embellishments you use. So for a raider, you could even just use your raid embellishments, bring those right into Mythic Plus and be fine. So that's what I would recommend there. And moving into our tier set. So our tier set this season is incredible for Mythic Plus. I absolutely love it. Deathcoil epidemic damage increased by 10%. All of our damage in Mythic Plus comes from Epidemic pretty much. So just a straight 10% increase on that is great for us. And then as you can see, the second part of our 2 set is casting Death Coil or Epidemic grants a stack of Master of Death up to 20. And then Dark Transformation consumes Master of Death and grants 1% mastery for each stack. So we're getting 20% mastery pretty much every Dark Transformation, which is just a massive damage increase. The 20% mastery plus the 8% from the Defile, we effectively have 30% increased mastery every pack we pull almost, which is just crazy. I cannot wait to get my hands on this and start using this in the key. Our damage is just going to be awesome. And then the 4 set pretty much just ensures that every boss we're going to have it up. So when you hit army, you get 20 stacks of Master of Death, and then you can just hit Dark Transformation, which will then give us that huge mastery increase. And then whenever you use Sudden Doom with the 4 set, you can extra stack the Master of Death and 10% more mastery. So it's just more damage. Sorry if you guys are hearing church bells across the street right now. I'm not sure if you are, but yeah. This tier set, just more mastery, more damage. I'm very, very excited to pick up this tier set. Alright, now moving into our rotation. So, pull this over here for you guys. Our rotation is pretty simple. The single target in AoE is pretty close to the same opener, but there's some rotational stuff we'll talk about that you want to keep up pretty much the entire dungeon. So for our AoE rotation, we pretty much are going to have Unholy Blight, Dark Transform, Apocalypse up for every pull. When you get up to higher keys, it's pretty much 45 seconds from the start of one pull to the start of the next pull. So we luckily have cooldowns up for almost every single pull, which is great. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to drop Defile when you run in. Lost it. Drop Defile as you run in. You're going to want to Scourge Strike to get the Plaguebringer buff running. This is one of the most important things in a dungeon, is you want to have 80, 90 plus % uptime on Plaguebringer up for the entire dungeon. It's where a lot of our damage comes from. It's passive, and you're pretty much going to want to keep that buff up all the time. To run in, Defile, Scourge Strike to get Plaguebringer, hit Unholy Blight immediately to get your diseases on everyone, and then you can go into your standard rotation where you hit Dark Transformation, Abomination Limb, Unholy Assault, Apocalypse, and Power Rune Weapon, and then your Trinket if you have it up. And then you're pretty much just going to want to spam Epidemics. You spam Epidemics, you keep your Plaguebringer buff up, you keep your Defile buff up, and then you continue spamming Epidemics. And that is pretty much it for Unholy in keys. So just to give you a quick little idea of what's going on here, I'll do it on the training dummies here. Like I said, your tank's running in, you drop your Defile, you get in, hit your Scourge Strike, Defile, Dark Transform, Unholy, boom, 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 and then you start slamming. As you can see, I have my thing up, my weak aura up, that's tracking Defiles. So you're pretty much just making sure you hit Plaguebringer every 10 seconds, spamming your Epidemics, and then keeping up your Defile stacks. Boom, Defile. Reapply your Virulent Plagues, Scourge Strike, and then Epidemics. Boom. And that is your entire rotation in keys. Pretty simple. Let's see, am I going to hit this one? Oh, I'm not going to hit this one. So you can get 3 to 4 Defiles in a row if you hit the timings correctly. But that's pretty much our AoE rotation right there. And like you can see, we're pretty much having sustained 150 plus DPS. So, like I was saying, the big things there. Keep up your Plaguebringer buff. Every 10 seconds at least hit Scourge Strike to keep that up. That's one of our biggest damage sources. And then weaving in those Defiles to try to keep your Defile buff up for as much as possible. That 8% mastery is huge for us. Single target, pretty similar. You add on an army as you run in, and then instead of spamming Epidemics, you're spamming Death Coils. That's pretty much the only difference. So say we have our dummy right here, run in, boom, Unholy Blight, Dark Transformation, Unholy Assault. I didn't wait long enough, so I can't A-bomb them or Rune Weapon, but you would usually hit those. And then you just start spamming your Death Coils. keep your Defile buff up, keep your Plaguebringer buff up, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Pretty simple rotation we got going on there. As far as consumables that you're gonna want for Mythic Plus, depending if you have a blade or a mace, you're gonna want a whetstone, or a weightstone is the other one, I believe. Oh, you'll have that up. A sharpening stone. I've been using file type of versatility. You can sim yourself to see if there's a better file out there. It's just cheap. It gives us good verse, gives us some damage reduction. Food, you're just going to want the feast. Drop the feast at the beginning. Make sure you have the food embellishment if you can. 100% increased food duration, and not losing it every death is great. Let's see, what else do we got? We have the 2 new potions of power, ultimate power, which you can buy on the auction house now this season, which is great. You can use rank 2 or rank 3. I just have a lot because I have an alchemist, so you'll pretty much want to slam those every boss. Fallen Crusader all the time. I use Mastery Enchants, Waking Stats, and then you can pretty much Fierce Armor Kit as well. And then for your wrists and cape, Leech or Avoidance is fine. Whatever you feel like putting on there, they're both good for Mythic Plus. What else do we got rotation-wise? Oh, so with Army in Mythic Plus, it's effectively a 3-minute cooldown because of our talent, Army the Damned. Whenever you hit Epidemic or Death Coil armies, cooldowns reduced by 5 seconds. So you'll pretty much want to be slamming Army on cooldown. Even on trash packs, on bosses, you can usually get a use of it between bosses on a trash pack and have it up for the next boss, depending on who you are. You just won't want to slam it if you're on a pack right before a boss and it comes up. At that point, I would just save it for boss and use it there, because you'll get more value on bosses there. Alright, moving on to defensives and survivability as a Death Knight. So, as a Death Knight, we are extremely tanky, like I was talking about earlier with our talents. AMS, Veteran of the Third War, take Permafrost, Will of the Necropolis, Blood Draw. That, combined with the fact that we have 3 stellar defensives, Icebound giving us 30% damage reduction, into stuns, gets you out of stuns as well. AMS, huge magic absorption, and can negate a ton of magic abilities in keys. I'll be making a series later on, going pretty much walking through each dungeon on what you can use AMS to immune and negate in dungeons, so some tips and tricks coming up soon there. Lichborn, you obviously take the talent that reduces your damage taken. Where is that guy? Unholy Endurance. So that just gets you another DR. 15% damage reduction from that, and increases our leech. So those Lichborn combined with Deathstrike is also an incredible combination. That's pretty much all of our defensives there. You get low, you can smash a Deathstrike. You have your pots. AMZ, if you're talented into it, is a great group-wide buff. Defensive button to press. Pretty much for the most part, if you die in a key as an Unholy Death Knight, it's usually your fault eating mechanic. It's almost never a healer throughput problem. You can make your healer's life very easy by rotating your defensive cooldowns, pre-AMSing a lot of mechanics to completely cancel them, and just rotating your 3 big defensives throughout the dungeon. Like, you have a 3-minute Icebound, AMS being 40 seconds, just absolutely absurd in keys, and then 2 minutes on Lichborn. That with Deathstrike and healing potions, and you should not be dying. Like I said, if you're dying, it's pretty much on you. And I think with that, I've pretty much covered everything I wanted to in this first video. So, like I said, we'll have a series of videos coming up going through each Mythic Plus dungeon with some unholy tips and tricks for each dungeon. And yeah, we'll see where it goes from there. So thank you guys for watching, and hope to see you soon.